thank you for coming back and talking about COVID. While some people think that we are out of the woods, you are seeing something different in your own office. What's going on?
Yeah, in the last couple of weeks, we're actually seeing an increase in cases in terms of people testing positive for COVID-19, being symptomatic. Luckily, these individuals aren't ending up in the hospital, largely because majority of them are vaccinated, but also we have a lot more therapeutics now. So I think I had mentioned to you earlier, I've been written for the antiviral Paxlovid almost every day this week. So there is definitely an increase in cases. So hopefully, those hospitalizations and the burden on resources don't increase too. But it's nowhere near gone. Let's put it that way.
What is the correlation between the rising COVID cases you're seeing and the time of year? Is there any correlation with the season?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's interesting. We see more of the rise in fall and winter, right? Because people are spending more time indoors, where there's not good ventilation and people are congregating for holidays. But I suspect this rise is actually from spring break because a lot of people recently have been traveling and the mask mandates have come down on airplanes, public transportation, and airports. So, it's no coincidence that a lot of people have been falling ill either while they were on spring break or after they came back from vacations with their families.
And obviously, mask mandates vary from business to business and state to state. But what is your personal expert feel on masking at this time?
Yeah, especially seeing the cases rising, I'm still masking in all indoor spaces. It's still required in our medical offices, but I'm still masking on any type of public transportation and any store, let's say, that I go into, any public place where I don't know the other people around me. And I encourage others to do the same because the other twist in all of this is that it's allergy season. So people are coughing, sneezing, wheezing more also. And I have a feeling many are confusing their allergy seasons for COVID. In fact, I've seen it. People have assumed it was just allergies, and then it did turn out to be COVID. So you have to be careful, especially this time of year.
So you just mentioned allergy season, but there's also something really odd going on, which is also a hybrid of COVID and the flu. Now, is this just a media term, flu-rona, or is there something legitimate to that?
Yeah, it's there is something legitimate to it. We have seen cases where both the flu and COVID can unfortunately exist at the same time in the same person. But luckily, it's not super common. So I think there is a little bit of sensationalism around it. It's a interesting, fun sounding name, but it's not necessarily anything that you have to fear, especially if you've been vaccinated against both the flu and the coronavirus. And remember, like I mentioned, the masking, hand washing, distancing will still protect you from both. But it is important because we can't forget about other viruses too. So we have been seeing more flu cases as well. So flu had been very quiet the last 2 years because of all the mask mandates and distancing. And now that's starting to come back too because a lot of the restrictions are loosening too. Some people may have forgotten to get their flu shot this year because it was so quiet the last 2 years. So it's important to take note of both.
What do you expect, if you can make any prediction of how COVID is going to behave going forward for the summer months?
Yeah, it's hard. Like I stopped making predictions about this pandemic because everyone is always wrong. There's always some surprise. But I think generally speaking, for all respiratory viruses, summer months are much better because people are outdoors more. A lot of those high risk transmission situations are much less. So that's a good thing. But it'll be interesting now because this is the first summer without the mask mandate in a lot of public places and on public transportation. I know airplanes have good ventilation filtration systems, but places like buses, trains, shared cars, they don't have good ventilation, and you can't really crack a window open on a subway or a train. So it will be interesting now with the looser, restrictions and the mandates lifting to see what happens. But generally, summer is better because people are outside more and, not enclosed and tightly packed spaces.
And what is your advice for those watching? It's it's never a bad idea to mask. It's never a bad idea to wash your hands. Is there any other preventative measures that you would suggest for, I mean, not only just COVID, but for the flu, for everything else that's
Mhm.
going on?
Well, the number one thing is, vaccines. If you're not yet vaccinated for the flu, it's not too late. We do see cases into the summertime, and especially if either you're high risk or you interact with, family and friends that are high risk, you're protecting them also. And then same goes for for COVID-19. I think only 30% of the country has had their third booster shot. So if you haven't had that third shot yet, please go and get it. Or if you haven't had any shot yet, please go and get it. We have so much data now that it's no longer, you can't no longer say that it's experimental and that we don't have long-term data. We actually have that information now. So they're very safe and effective. And then the other piece of advice I give everybody is like tailor it to your personal situation. Like everybody's risk profile is very different. I'm still masking everywhere. One, because I personally don't want COVID, even in its mildest form. There's a lot of long-term complications I'm seeing as a doctor with long COVID, even from mild and asymptomatic cases. But also, I treat asthmatics. I treat immunocompromised individuals. I interact with them in my family. So I still want to protect them as well. So you have to take these things into consideration. And to me, the masking is not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy and I know you have to get to your next patient. So thank you for taking the time. And our next episode, I want to talk about the long-term complications of COVID,
Oh,
even
yes.
most mild form. So thank you again, doctor.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Thank you.